Colombian Nobel Literature Prize winner, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, once wrote a book entitled The Chronicle of a Death Pre-Announced. When we study postmodernism to a certain degree, it is the chronicle of a death or a demise previously announced. Postmodernism itself looks at modernism through those unrealistic expectations that it had built up for a material utopia. They had promised what they simply could not deliver. Precisely when it made its most grandiose promises, it produced the greatest devastations. It was in a sense of ultimate optimism and hope for this perfect utopic world that was to come that there developed this sense of massive disillusionment. It developed very, very rapidly with the events that would soon follow. The first thing was the outbreak of World War I. Right when everything looked like technology would produce so much good, technology was to produce so much death and destruction over what was seen as a relatively minor event, at least as far as it was based upon the world stage and world importance. Even with all of the devastation and the millions of deaths in World War I, as that was drawing to a close, some held a renewed sense of optimism, and they called it the war to end all wars. It was like it was the death throes of the old world order. And then right exactly at that moment came the great flu pandemic that killed millions of people. Individuals would head off to work in the morning, strong and healthy young individuals. They would collapse by noon. Then they would be dead by that evening. Soon after that, then, only a few years later, that war to end all wars actually engendered a war that was even worse. And the Second World War now had victims not counted in the millions, but in the tens of millions. It wasn't primarily a European event, but it was a war that did engulf the entire world. And as World War II was drawing to an end, the hope that that might have engendered was brought to its knees by a sobering reality, and that was the horrors of the Holocaust, realizing how the science of supposed good had been used in a racist manner to create such terrible devastation and destruction among the vulnerable populations of Europe. Postmodernism then grew out of the disillusionment of this once grandiose philosophy. And that new philosophy that was produced had to produce a new worldview to go along with it. Postmodernism then was a thoughtful reasoning and reflection of disillusioned scholars who then used the very tools of modernism itself for its deconstruction. Modernism had used the tools of analysis to destroy what had been the presentation of Christianity as this great and noble world order. They pointed out that it had often been used by the rich and the powerful to enrich themselves and to further sustain or extend their power over others, and that obviously was true. It was a misuse of Christianity, but they used that misuse of Christianity as a means to deconstruct Christianity itself as a popular worldview and accepted source of knowledge and of truth. But postmodernism used those very same tools against them, because they also had made false and unrealistic promises. They had also created a sense of deception by using the knowledge that they produced and claimed as a truth to further engender their own power and their own self-enrichment. Postmodernism was, as much as anything, an awareness that modernism itself had failed and was collapsing in and upon itself, and that was to become much of this new philosophy. Postmodernism then developed some cognitive themes around which it was built. Interesting enough, these are virtually all negative. They talk about what modernism isn't or where modernism has failed, and they do not so much posit any new ideas or better suggestions about how to move forward. Modernism would say that we must admit our bias and study others on the basis of equality and search for an anemic view. That is certainly true, and I would agree with that. And in doing that, they are throwing to the ground many of the presuppositions used by the social scientists working in a modernist theorem. They also would say that we cannot trust the concept of universal truth, especially when that universal truth is of our own making. and I would heartily agree with that. If we build our own reality, how can we then say that that is universal and equally true for everyone else? That cannot be done. Now, postmodernists might apply that and probably would apply that to Christianity as well, and there I would not agree. But applied to some of the exuberance of excessive optimism of modernism, that certainly was true, as they used modernism and their newfound knowledge to destroy others. We must have some source of ethics and values, and modernism points that out. And yet when they point that out, they do not offer any absolute source for ethics and values. And it becomes a situation where each person is their own source for ethics and values. And obviously that leads to an ultimate scenario where anarchy rules and there is no right or wrong for anyone other than oneself. And it brings with it the terrible risk that my ethics and my values might imply that somehow I would be benefited by destroying the other. And that's what happened in Adolf Hitler's Germany. We must accept, postmodernism would say, that all forms of knowledge are integral components of power and control, and that certainly is true as well. Knowledge then becomes a source of control and power over those who do not have it. And so those of the university today will lord it over those who supposedly do not have their knowledge and their understanding of things. And they use that then to control everything from budgets to access to public media to the public discourse, things of that nature. Postmodern cognitive themes also include things such as distrust of any reason that is of our own social construct. And most of modernist reason was a social construct. It was not something that could be realistic proven outside of itself. Postmodernism would say that all scientists accept unprovable sources as a basis for much of their knowledge, and that is certainly true as well, as we've seen in the evolutionists and others who propose new theories. No one source can be proven to be ultimately true, and so we must accept other sources of knowledge. And if we would use that term proven in the understanding of the modernist, I would agree with that. We can, though, know that there is an ultimate source of knowledge, but it can't be proven in the laboratory. It can be proven in the realities of life. We do not deny something simply because we don't have the technology to observe it and test it. That is obviously true as well. There are many things in this life that we cannot put in a test tube, that we cannot quantify. While postmodernists might not necessarily point to religion as an example, they probably would point to something such as love. How can you test love to know that it really exists? In what quantity and what quality? That's obviously impossible. If it's impossible for something as common as love, what then about something like the nature and knowledge of God? Knowledge is then constructed by the human mind, and it's not passively received from the outside world. And what the scientist observes depends on his or her place in society, his or her culture, his or her understanding of history, and finally, the prejudices that that person already holds. And that certainly should be an obvious fact. Postmodernity then fails in that it fails to offer any new and meaningful solutions to the very problems that it points out in modernism. Postmodernity leads to an absolute universalism. It's an ultimate, you're okay, I'm okay. There's nothing to say that anything is wrong. And then even if I were to say it was wrong for you to kill someone, how can I prove that? Because there is no absolute knowledge. And as a result, absolute universalism tends to lead to absolute anarchism. Postmodernity leads to an extreme egocentrism, because since I'm the ultimate source of knowledge and truth, the ultimate judgment of what's right and is wrong, I actually then deify myself. I become God, at least in my own universe. It is a situation then where each person determines what's right or what's wrong based on their own experience and on their own life. And obviously that would make society and culture as we know it impossible. Postmodernity leads to a frenetic consumerism, because often in this situation, since it is the here and the now, it is what we feel and what we see. We often feel and we often see what makes us feel good at that particular moment. You buy a new computer and you're all excited about it for a little while, but pretty soon that newness fades. So what do? You got to go out and get something else that again makes you feel excited. And pretty soon it's this endless pursuit of accumulating more and more things, each of which leaves you quite soon disillusioned and quite soon in need of another consumerism fix. Postmodernity leads to the commodification of human beings. You become a production in the sense that you are producing wealth by buying things. The day that you stop buying things, you become then useless to society. And it is that pursuit of what one person wants that makes the person themselves a commodity that is to be used and to be sold. Postmodernity has become a luxury for those who have the time and the money to sit around and reflect in hopelessness about a world that they see no way to make any better. You and I as Christians know that we can make this world a better place. And we know that we're in this world for a period of time only, and that what we do in this world determines where we will spend eternity. We have hope to offer to those who have no hope.